Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at the top headlines of the hour. The US Senate has moved forward on a bill to reopen the government until January the 30th after a record 40-day shutdown. The measure includes 3 funding packages and now requires House approval before reaching President Trump's desk. The Kremlin says Russia remains open to resolving the Ukraine conflict through diplomacy, but admits the situation is stuck. It also responds to President Trump's remarks, saying Moscow too wants to end the war as soon as possible. Russian forces destroy 4 Ukrainian drone boats near the Black Sea port of Tuapse, where fuel exports remain suspended after earlier attacks. Officials say 1 drone detonated near the coast, damaging buildings but causing no casualties. BBC Chair Samir Shah is set to apologise in a written statement to a parliamentary committee after BBC director Tim Davie and CEO of News Deborah Turness resigned from their roles following criticism that BBC's Panorama misled viewers by editing a speech by US President Donald Trump. The Gaza Health Ministry has said it has received the bodies of 15 Palestinian prisoners under the US-brokered ceasefire exchange deal. The bodies have been reportedly returned in exchange for the remains of Israeli officer Lieutenant Hadar Goldin, handed back to Israel the day before. Thailand has suspended a US-brokered peace agreement with Cambodia after a landmine explosion injured 2 Thai soldiers near the border. Officials say follow-up talks and prisoner releases under the deal have been put on hold. Super typhoon Feng Wong has killed 4 people in the Philippines after battering Luzon with winds and torrential rain. Authorities say more than 1 million people were evacuated before the storm made landfall on Sunday. Around 200 fighters have been killed in clashes between Boko Haram and the Islamic State of West Africa in terrorists in northeast Nigeria. Fighting erupted near Lake Chad as rival factions battled for control of territory, according to security sources. Well, those are the headlines this hour, but we start in the United States for our top story. And after 40 days of government chaos, the US Senate has moved forward on a measure to reopen the federal government. The bill, which passed a procedural vote by a 60-40 margin, would fund the government until January the 30th and include funding for 3 full-year appropriations. If passed, the bill must be approved by the House and signed by President Trump. The measure includes a key Democratic win, a vote in December on extending subsidies under the Affordable Care Act, which have been set to expire. Additionally, federal workers will be protected from being fired until January the 30th, with back pay for all federal employees, including military personnel and air traffic controllers. With the Senate reconvening on Monday, Republican leaders are hoping to reach a partisan deal to fast-track the passage and avoid extending the shutdown into next weekend. Joining us now is Dr. Satoru Nagao. He's a fellow at the Hudson Institute and he joins us live from Tokyo in Japan. Thank you very much, Dr. Nagao, for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you. A huge development coming out of the United States, and after over 40 days of the government being shut down, there seems to be some progress. How significant is this development?
This is very significant because in the near future, if this shutdown continue, all of the flight will be stopped. But this is the season of the Thanksgiving and Christmas. So end of this month, if the flight will end, the flight will not taking off, most of the people will be very upset, and it will affect the midterm election next year. And in case of the food stamp, which is food delivered to the few income people, this is also a crisis if the governmental budget is shutting down. So that's why this is a very important deal to prepare the end of this year, and this is the most important event for the United States. But originally, what happened is the Democrat side want to use this chance to rise their popularity because the government's policy is a failure because of the shutdown. That is the logic. So that's why the Republicans' failure is a problem. Because of the problem of shutdown, the Democrats want to say. So shutdown is exploitable. And the next year's midterm election, so this situation will be an advantage for the opposition parties, they believe. But at the same, as a response, the governmental side, Republican side, lay off many governmental workers, or stop the many budgets, lack of the budget, so automatically stop many budgets, not for emergency. So that's why. That's why the Republican side also choose a hawkish stance to reply the Democratic tactics. So So that's why in the midterm election, which one will be the more damaged is the matter of concern. And finally, their decision is 8 Democrats politicians change the stance to join the Republicans' move, and in the Senate, the 60s they get with the 100. So this means that the governmental shutdown will be end. So that has happened.
Yes, and Dr. Nagao, how much economic relief will this bring both in the US and globally?
This will be the big impact, of course, because the Christmas season is the most biggest economic event. So many countries rely on the U.S. market still. That's why President Trump's decision to impose tariff is influential, because many countries rely on the U.S. market. But if the most important event in the year, which is the Christmas season, will be season of the shutdown, of course, the economy is also damaged, and international business is also damaged. So that's why the many countries cannot get the benefit through the market in the United States in the most important event season. That is the damage, I think.
Yes, Dr. Nagao, do stay with us as we have further updates coming out of the United States. Global stock markets surged today as investors grew optimistic that the US government shutdown is nearing its end. The shutdown, now in its 5th week, has caused uncertainty in the economy, but news of a potential resolution helped boost market confidence. Stock markets in the Asia-Pacific saw significant gains, with South Korea's Kospi leading the charge, rising nearly 3%. Japan's Nikkei 225 and Hong Kong's Hang Seng slowly followed, up by 1.3 and 1.5% respectively. US futures for S&P 500 and Nasdaq 100 also climbed ahead of the market's reopening. Oil prices also rose on the same optimism, with Brent crude rising 0.79% to $64.13 a barrel as markets react to the latest political developments. Analysts are hopeful for a swift resolution to the shutdown, which could also help stimulate the global economy. Joining us now once again is Dr. Nagao. Markets here have reacted instantly, and the shutdown is not over technically. Airline and oil stocks have climbed. Is this optimism justified?
Of course, these investors, rich people, want to get more money. Before the other people move, they need to move. Because if the stock is not expensive now, if the economy recovers, it will rise the price. This means that the gap between the low cost and higher prices will be their benefit. So that's why they try to move faster than others is their move. In this case, news came to the shutdown will end. This is good news, and the economy will rise up. This means that they need to buy as soon as possible before other people buy it. So that's why this price will rise. But at the same time, the reality is real economy will come later, not just now. So this is because of the investment that the situation has happened. But at the same time, the reality is the real situation will come a little bit later, not just now.
Yes, Dr. Nagao, thank you very much for joining us and bringing us your insight on that situation unfurling in the United States. We will, of course, bring you all the updates here on NewsX World. Now, over to the United Kingdom, and Deborah Turner, CEO of BBC News, has resigned following accusations of bias at the British Broadcasting Corporation. In a recent encounter with the media, she has defended the BBC, stating that there was no institutional bias, but acknowledged mistakes were made. She has also expressed confidence that the full story would soon emerge, and for now, she would focus on visiting the BBC teams to offer them her support. Let's take a listen into her statements.
I would like to say it has been the privilege of my career to serve as the CEO of BBC News and to work with our brilliant team of journalists. I stepped down over the weekend because the buck stops with me. But I'd like to make one thing very clear. BBC News is not institutionally biased. That's why it's the world's most trusted news provider. Hard-working people who strive for impartiality.
Now, the BBC has been under increasing pressure after a report was leaked by a former standards advisor. The reports cited shortcomings in the BBC's coverage of the Israel-Hamas war, transgender issues, and a controversial edit of a speech made by US President Donald Trump. The misleading edit of the speech was reportedly part of the BBC's Panorama programme and made it seem that Trump had incited the January the 6th Capitol attack. In response to the controversy, the BBC is expected to issue a formal apology for its handling of Trump's speech. Joining us now is Alexander Ciel. He's a French and British journalist and he joins us live from London. Alexander, pleasure to talk to you as always. Of course, two senior BBC figures have quit over accusations of bias in this Panorama episode. How damaging is this for the BBC overall?
Yes, it is very damaging because it is, first of all, very terrible because the BBC is respected in the UK and internationally, and so the timing of the resignations, Tim Davies and Turness's resignations, immediately after the memo and the Panorama revelations were published, reinforced the sense that the crisis has reached the highest levels of BBC leadership. Today, Samir Shah, the chair of the BBC, is about to address a parliamentary committee as the cooperation faces intense political and public pressure. His appearance marks the first time the BBC's most senior figure will speak publicly since two of the organization's top executive, Tim Davie and Deborah Turness, resigned yesterday over the unfolding editorial scandal. Shah's testimony is expected to shape the next phase of the crisis, clarify what went wrong, and outline how the BBC plans to restore trust. The crisis began when, as you said, when the BBC's flagship investigative program, Panorama, was accused of producing a misleading and potentially politically damaging edit of a speech by former US President Donald Trump. So according to reporting, producers stitched together two lines from Trump's speech that were delivered many minutes apart. So really, MPs would need to question Samir Shah. He might make a formal apology for the Panorama edit and for the damage caused by the BBC's credibility, maybe an acknowledgement of the editorial errors, including an explanation of how they occurred. So many MPs are waiting to hear from Samir Shah today.
Yes, Alexander, and of course, the corporation is going to say that it's going to apologise today, and it's attending that parliamentary hearing, as you said. Can an apology restore global trust in the BBC's impartiality, or is this one scandal too many for the corporation?
It's one scandal too many, as you said, because MPs are expected to press Shah on the exact editorial chain of command that approved the Panorama edit, why internal concerns reportedly went unaddressed for months or years, whether the BBC ignored staff warnings about problems in the newsroom, how the BBC intends to guarantee impartiality in politically sensitive reporting, whether the leadership culture contributed to the crisis, and what safeguards will prevent similar failures in the future. But despite the resignations yesterday, Deborah Turnus and Tim Davie won't leave immediately. There's going to be a time scale when the new Director General and CEO are going to be replaced. So they're likely to stay on for a tiny bit.
Yes, Alexander Ciel, thank you very much for bringing us that information straight to us from London. Pleasure to have you on the programme. We now move over to Syria for our next story, where according to media reports, Syria has foiled 2 Islamist state plots to assassinate President Ahmed al-Shara. The plots were thwarted in recent months, and this also highlights the personal threats Shara faces while consolidating power in a nation torn by 14 years of civil war. One of the attempts involved a pre-announced official engagement with Shara, and these revelations come as Shara is set to meet US President Donald Trump for a historic White House visit, aiming to join a US-led coalition against Islamic State. Shara, who rose to power after ousting President Bashar al-Assad, is striving to gain international support for Syria's reconstruction. And his government has been battling Islamic State forces for years. And recent operations have led to the arrest of over 70 IS suspects. Joining us now is Mati Zawaig. He is a geopolitical expert and he joins us live from Israel. Mati, thank you very much for joining us here on NewsX World. Of course, this situation comes as the Syrian leader is in Washington for talks with Donald Trump, a groundbreaking meeting. What more can you tell us about the current situation in Syria, whether he is going to get that international recognition, and also, of course, the threat which terrorists and groups like IS still show about in the country of Syria?
Well, the situation in Syria continues to be very volatile, and I think that the uncover of all these so-called alleged plots against Ashara, I think they have a timing, and the timing is the meeting today with Donald Trump and the will of Ashara to make the international powers to lift all the sanctions against them and to start the long-awaited time of rebuilding this country that has been torn off by the civil war from 14 years ago. So the will is very clear. Everyone wants to have this. The question is that the internal situation from al-Shara is that he has been anyway fighting his ex-allies from the ISIS and others like Tahrir al-Sham, that he was also killing them from 2016. And they took separate ways. Then Ashara took the power, and now they try to continue and to try to erase them from the political arena and the military arena. And so he has a common goal with Donald Trump that he said that they must fight together the Islamic State. So we have here a very interesting conjunctions of desires from a big superpower like United States that are trying to bring also business and also stability to the area, and a movement like from al-Shara that some of them, they continue to push him to destabilize and to attack minorities and to kill them. So we have here a conflict of interest, but a common will of lifting all the sanctions against them.
Yes, Mati, do stay with us as we have further updates. Of course, we will bring you that ever-evolving situation on Syria. But we stay in West Asia next, and the Settlement Administration in Israel's Defense Ministry has set permanent boundaries for 13 West Bank settlements, including several retroactively legalized by the government. Among them is Sar Nur, a settlement evacuated in the 2005 Gaza disengagement plan, which is planned for repopulation. This boundary-setting process aims to formalize the legalization of settlements previously deemed illegal outposts. Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich, overseeing the process, praised the move, calling it Zionism at its best and emphasizing the historical justice of children returning to build their country. The settlements receiving new boundaries include Aiya, Harasha, Migron, Nofe Prat, Ide Ad and others. But these settlements have been deemed illegal by the international community. According to the United Nations, Israeli settlements have no legal validity and constitute a flagrant violation of international law and EU restrictions. The United Nations have further stated that they are systemically shrinking the territory of the Palestinian state and further entrenching Israel's quote-unquote unlawful occupation. Matti joins us once again. Matti, before we discuss the international reaction, I first want to focus on the United States. Of course, Israel. I mean, of course, Donald Trump has said Israel will not be allowed to annex the West Bank, kind of seemingly getting a bit aggravated about Israel's actions there. Now this plan is going ahead. What are your thoughts on what the US might think of it?
Well, we have to divide the answer, because one thing is about these plans. I must remind you that for the last 57 years, Israel slowly has been doing more and more settlements in what some, even the labor governments, they put some of them, but they put it in another way. They put it around the actual boundaries of the West Bank, and the other right-wing governments, they say, no, we don't have only to secure our border, we have also to put inside, in every place, in every hill. So in all these last 57 years, they were doing settlements to go back, as they say, especially in the right, to the core of the soul of the Jewish nation that started in that area thousands of years ago. The question is today, what is the international status of all this? And every time the UN and others, they were saying there are a blatant breach of the resolutions, and then they forget about them, and then there are new ones, and then they say this again. This is not the question. The question is what is going to be with the actual government if they are trying to annex all these areas against the will of even Donald Trump. And the answer is no. They are not going to do it, but they are going to talk a lot about this. This is what's happening now. These are more settlements in more hills in Judea and Samaria, and they are going everyone to protest, and then they are going to continue, because you don't have to forget that when they have a political settlement like the Oslo Accords, then some of the settlements were, they talk they must go out from these areas for determine a future Palestinian state. Now things are going in another path, but everything is going to be part of a political solution in the future. And now we are seeing that Donald Trump and the Israeli government don't go the same path. So this is just another mark in this history.
Yes, Matti's awake. Thank you very much for joining us here on NewsX World. It's a pleasure to have you on the programme as always. We now move on and over to Africa, where the African Union has called for an urgent international response in Mali, including intelligence sharing to address worsening security conditions in the country, where insurgents are imposing a fuel blockade and kidnapping foreigners. Reports suggest that an al-Qaeda-linked jihadist group active in West Africa's Sahel region has blocked fuel imports since September, attacking convoys of tankers and creating a shortage that forced schools and businesses to shut. The latest show of force by the group, Jamaat Nusrat al-Islam wal Muslimin, has raised concern that it might eventually try to impose its rule over the landlocked country. Meanwhile, Western countries, including the United States, France, Britain and Italy, are urging their citizens to leave Mali. And over to the Indo-Pacific finally, and Indonesia has awarded the late President Suharto the title of National Hero, despite protests from pro-democracy activists and families affected by his authoritarian rule. Suharto, who ruled the country for over 3 decades until being ousted in 1988 amid violent protests, was recognized in a ceremony led by President Prabowo Subianto, Suharto's son-in-law. The title of National Hero is awarded annually to individuals who have made significant contributions to the country's development. Suharto, whose rule was marked by accusations of corruption, nepotism and human rights violations, passed away in 2008. His daughter and son accepted the award on his behalf, sparking controversy as many argue the recognition overlooks the darker aspects of his legacy. Well, that's all that we have time for this hour. Keep watching NewsX World for more international news updates.